Hello, everybody. This is Brant Breakerhoff from Ash Games, and today I am answering questions from our studio audience about creating a Kickstarter campaign. And this week I received all sorts of really great comments and questions. So if you're a person, especially if you're a person who's looking into running your own campaign, or you're thinking about it, or thinking about designing a game and thinking about the different options you might have in order to get the thing published, we've got some questions and we've got some answers. So let's jump in and let's get going. So first question says, I realize it's hard to get a publisher, but isn't a Kickstarter a ton of work? The answer, yes. Actually, both of those things are big yeses. And for some, finding a publisher is extremely difficult, and it requires a whole set of skills and putting yourself out there and getting it in front of people and making a lot of connections and contacts. And for many games, it can be a difficult thing. But a lot of publishers, they do have open calls for entries. They have different design events, like it's talked about in another AMA. A lot of board game competitions are all about making that connection, board game designers to publishers. In the terms of Oros, though, I've been approached by multiple publishers multiple times about publishing the game, licensing the game, and ultimately I've turned down all of the offers that I've gotten, and mainly because they wanted to do it the way that I didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it the way that I wanted to do it. And so I ultimately ended up turning down different offers and things like that, because really I had a certain goal, and I wanted to have a certain experience and be able to have creative control over the game and over the things that I'm working on. And plus, I wanted to exhibit the different skills and abilities that I have as well. And so that really, this is a passion project. And so just creating the game and having it in the world wasn't my end goal. I wanted to be able to create a board game studio and more of a company and have more of a long-term relationship with the game. So just selling off, all of the rights to it didn't really, it wasn't very appetizing to me. And so I wanted to go all in. Plus, I really wanted to see what it took to run a Kickstarter. Because certainly from the outside, it seems simple, or it seems like there's a lot of pitfalls, because as you look at different campaigns, you're like, oh, wow, they did horrible. They completely tanked. The project didn't go anywhere. There's other ones that it just seems like everything is just perfect and flawless and the easiest thing in the world to do. And the reality is, running a successful Kickstarter campaign is extremely time consuming and extremely difficult. And I'll be completely honest, I haven't even launched my campaign yet. I don't even know if the things that I've been doing are going to be successful, right? And so there's a big risk. There's a whole lot of investment that I've poured into this game, and there's a giant risk that who knows what will happen. Any sort of thing could occur from now until we launch in just under 2 weeks. So, but it's a ton of work. It's a ton of work. And I think as I've gone through this process, I've been amazed at all of the things that have to get done. Really, publishing a board game is a million little things. Every little step it's fairly simple. It's a million simple things. But there's a million things to do. There's so many things that have to get done, and it can be very overwhelming and definitely a lot of work. So I would say yes, running a Kickstarter is an extreme amount of work. So if that's what you're into, and if you're still interested in doing it, just buckle up and get prepared, because it's going to take its toll on you in some way or another. Okay, next question. All right. It's my understanding that you need different graphic designers for different things. Is this true? Okay, well, let's first start with what you can expect from a graphic designer, because not all graphic designers are equal. And unlike something like accounting or maths and sciences and things like that, where there are fixed absolutes, when it comes to artistry, design, creativity, there are no absolutes, right? So and so everybody does things a little differently, has different skill sets, has different interests. And so when you're hiring an artist, it's a very different experience, because there is no actual answer when it comes to creative endeavors. There is a million answers, and whoever you hire is going to find one of them, right? And that might not be where you were hoping for it to go. When it comes to designers, especially graphic designers, most graphic designers, well, it's graphic, which means visual. What they're working on is visual things. And then a designer is someone who not necessarily is creating or generating all of the assets. They're the person who's composing them. They're the person that's putting all of the pieces together. And when it comes to a lot of board games, especially across the board, what you see often in board game design is something that's called skeuomorphism. It's this idea that you try to take things and represent them what they look like in the outside world, and then represent them in this like visual space. And so a lot of games are very skeuomorphic, right? They'll put in, if it's a fantasy thing, there's going to be like growing moss and wind blown wood textures, and there's gilded metal and gold frames and all sorts of like ornate styling, which really steps farther into illustration than actual design. The design work is usually the things that are very structural, the things that are going to aid the user to be able to understand concepts quickly and make sure that it feels very clean. So when it comes to Oros, I rejected all skeuomorphism. So if you look through the game there are illustrations, but everything is very hyper minimal and clean. It's a very different concept in terms of design style. And it's a style that I prefer rather than skeuomorphic style. But if you're looking for the standard tropes, what people expect out of board games, you'll have to find the right graphic designer who knows how to deal with those types of things and be able to create that type of artwork, or work with an illustrator very closely to determine the exact right placing, spacing, sizing, and all of that stuff. But a board game, let's think of it this way. So when it comes to a Kickstarter campaign, especially a board game Kickstarter campaign, there's a lot of visual assets that go into this. And again, these are probably things that people don't fully think through, and I'm probably not even going to list all of them, but I actually wrote up a list here because this is such a big topic that I know I was going to forget something. So the first thing that comes from a graphic designer are the game assets, right? So that's all of your cards, your boards, your player mats, all of the iconography, custom meeple shapes if you're looking for things like that, the game branding itself, and the logo for the game itself, the full box and cover design, including all of the rule book, layout, and all that information. And the graphic designer is not going to do the writing for you too. So making sure that there's another writer, that's another player that's really has to work hand in hand, because the way that things are designed in a rule book, or the way they're visualized in a rule book, will help enhance what's written. So you can't just like rely on someone writing it first and then someone laying it out, because really there's a relationship between those things. And so it has to be someone who can work in that space and be able to create something. So you'll need a graphic designer to be able to just to be able to create the game assets themselves and make sure that they look professional grade. And so there's always a risk of doing it yourself. But again, I'm a professional graphic designer in my day job. I've been doing this for, 16 years or something like that. Now I have a lot of experience in making professional stuff. So I'm very comfortable. This is actually my little happy place, is designing these types of things. But then there's also things like minis. If your game has minis, you might need 3D modeling for those things. Most graphic designers don't have that skill set. Now, I'm sure you'll find one or two that do, or that dabble in, or that really enjoy that type of thing, and you might be lucky. But most don't have modeling experience, right? So all of that stuff is going to be a completely different person. You can't rely on your graphic designers to do that stuff. You also need a whole lot of photography or 3D renderings, because just creating the game assets doesn't mean that you actually have a way to visualize those assets for people to see the game and how good it looks and what they're actually buying and what they're getting into. That's what people really want to be able to see. So you'll need some really great photography or some really great 3D renderings of the game itself. And again, you might find graphic designers who also are pretty good photographers, but not always. And so it depends on who you're working with. And most graphic designers definitely probably don't dabble in 3D modeling or 3D rendering either. But again, all of the imagery that you see for Oros, it's all 3D renderings that I've done myself. So I have kind of this edge case over here that just happens to have a really broad skill set and some real grit, I suppose, to learn things that if I don't fully know how to do them, that I'll I'll grind through learning how to do them until I'm good at it. And so I don't know, I guess I'm a little obsessive like that, but not everybody's going to have that skill set. You also need a website, or at the very least a landing page, right? And that's a bunch of visual assets as well as content that has to be generated. And best way to do that is to have a designer that's looking at it, and that's a web designer. So again, if you hired a mechanic designer or a production designer to do your board game layout, they might not be comfortable creating websites. Some do, some will, but not all of them will. And so it all really depends on who you're finding to do this work. Beyond that, you also have marketing assets. There's a whole lot of marketing and social media assets. There's content. First off, content. Content is king when it comes to marketing. And your graphic designer likely is not going to be generating that content. So that likely will be a content strategist or some other person or yourself that's generating the content. And the graphic designer is really simply providing the artwork or the visual. And you'd be surprised. It's not just the rendering that you need. It often has graphic elements or little messages, or, it's launching on this day, or it's live now, or, whatever it is. There's a lot of little graphic design pieces that you end up needing to have available to be able to communicate different messages. And so and marketing is just this ongoing thing. And so again, that might be the same graphic designer. It absolutely could be. I've been doing all my own marketing, content creation and all that stuff, but it might not be. Especially it depends on, I guess, your timeline too, if the person even has bandwidth. You also have like email marketing, right? There's like email campaigns, all the content for that and all the visuals that go into that, and running email campaigns. That's a whole other side of things where, again, you'll need someone managing the design and the look and feel and making sure that everything's consistent. Again, it could be the same graphic designer that did the game bits, but it doesn't have to be. And then there's also a lot of video and animation assets. So you have things like a teaser type of overview that you'll definitely need to have for your game, right? So you need to be able to, in a minute to 2 minutes, tease the game and get people excited about it. You also need some sort of Kickstarter promo video that will sit at the top of the Kickstarter page. And those two videos can be the same thing. For me, they're going to be the same thing just because I do not have the bandwidth to make a completely separate video. So it is what it is, as much as I would love to have some big thematic movie trailer type of thing. I actually don't like those things on Kickstarter pages when they have a big thing like that. I really like videos that say, this is the game, this is how it works, this is what you can expect from it, and this is why it's great. That's the content that I want, and so that's the content that's going to be in my Kickstarter video, rather than these big thematic cinematic, I guess is the word, movie trailer type things that don't really tell you much, but they're really pretty. But people love those things too. They love big thematic things. So there's a whole Kickstarter promo video. There's also like how to play videos. And then there's also all sorts of like on-page animations that really help the engagement of a Kickstarter page. And so when it comes to video, again, most graphic designers aren't doing video work. Most people that are running Kickstarter campaigns are hiring full video and animation studios to do that work. And it's very expensive to do it. So, and it involves things like storyboarding. And storyboarding is, there's a person who's actually mapping out frame by frame exactly what's going to happen and in what sequence and what order. And then there's scripting. And scripting is a lot harder than you might think it is, because you can't just like get on like I'm talking right now and just start talking, right? Things have to be very organized and have to be very succinct, because you have to be able to deliver a very direct message in a very small amount of time. So there's storyboarding, scripting, the production itself, and that can vary, right? Because there could be live action video, like filming. There could be stop motion. There could be animation. There could also be motion design. And so that's a whole other thing too. Based on the group that you're hiring, they might focus on stop motion, or they might focus on animation. And so again, it's just, you'd have to find the right studio to be working with. And then there's editing, and then there's sound design. And usually, so if you go to a video studio, storyboarding, scripting, the production, the editing, and the sound design, those are 5 different people. That is not one person doing all of that. And so it's very unlikely. And you can definitely find people who, I'm this person, I focus on video and I do that stuff, right? And you can find people to do it. Again, for us, I've done all of my own video work, my own scripting, my own animations, I'm filming this right now that there's nobody in this room with me. I've started everything and I've set everything up, and I'm just running it all on my own. And so it's definitely possible to find people who have these broad and diverse skill sets, but it's very unlikely. Most people don't do that. Usually they're a videographer. That's the world they live in, and that's what you're hiring them to do. Or they're an animator. That's what they work in. That's what you're hiring them to do. And so those could be very often, those are going to be different people. And then you also have the whole Kickstarter page itself and the design of the Kickstarter page, which you'd think, oh, I've created all this other content. Certainly I can just drop it on a page and it'll be fine. But the way that Kickstarter pages are designed and all of the content on them, they actually require different types of assets. And so that's a whole new graphic design exercise that somebody has to go through to make that page really sing and really work well. So anyway, there are a lot of assets here, right? There's a lot of aspects that go into this. And so finding one person that will do it all, it's very unlikely. So, and especially if you have a timeline where you're trying to do this within a small amount of time. For me, I've been able to do all of this stuff because I started this project. I've started working on this Kickstarter, building up everything for Kickstarter about a year and a half ago. But there are, many publishers who are launching Kickstarters every 3 months, and so they've been working on it for maybe 4 to 6 months before that. And so every 4 to 6 months, they're doing it again. And the only way to do that is to have a large team. They have 10 to 12 people who are also hiring a handful of vendors who are doing a lot of work. And so it's very expensive to pay for all of that stuff and to do all of that stuff with just one person. So if you're just hiring one person, you have to expect, there's going to be a timeline, right? Because only one person can do only so much stuff with the time that they have in a day. So hope that helps. So to answer the question, long story short, do you need different graphic designers to do different things? Maybe not. But it's most likely you will need different people to do different things because it's very unlikely that someone has a full broad range of skill sets and you have the timeline to be able to have that one person do it all. I would recommend though having a person who's kind of like the main artist, often like the artist, especially when the graphic designer with board games. A lot of time the artist does the graphic design work, which isn't always a good idea because illustrators. They make beautiful, incredible stuff, but they're not always that great when it comes to communication design. That's a completely different discipline. But a lot of times the illustrator is also doing the graphic design work for the board game itself. And that person might not be the right person, especially to make videos or animations or things like that, right? So anyway, okay. Next question. What platforms did you devote the most pre-launch ad funding to? Okay. So this is the one part of this project where I said, this is outside of my wheelhouse. I actually tried. I got into advertising. I got into the little interfaces for Facebook and whatever to be able to generate ads, and was very quickly realized that this is a very specialized skill set that I do not understand. And so for me, for the advertising, actually I hired Next Level Web. Sean from there has been fantastic, and he's actually just been managing and running ads for me. So I supplied him with a bunch of artwork, a bunch of ideas, little video clips, all sorts of things that he could test and run ads with. And he's been running it for me. So I actually haven't paid all that much attention to it because I've got so many other things that are going on. I've just said, Sean, this is your world, and own it. Please own it for me and do your very best for me, because I don't have the bandwidth, and I also just don't have the know-how of like what's going on behind the scenes. So I don't really know how to answer that question. I know that in terms of platforms, most of the advertising has been on Facebook and Instagram. And I know that because I see it a whole lot of times. So that's where the thrust of it has been. And I've heard from best practices and from different places and blogs and wherever, doing research, that's where your best bang for your buck is. There's certainly different websites that offer advertising kits and things like that, where you can advertise on their pages. But I've heard that, the return on that investment is just so much lower. So if they're asking for a real high premium, like I've heard that BGG asked for a really high premium for their ads, and the return on that investment is rarely worth it. That's just what I've heard. I don't have any experience or anything to back that up. But if individual sites are asking for a lot, likely the return is not going to be great unless they're doing very specific things to focus the site on making sure those ads are successful. So for the most part, Facebook and Instagram advertising tends to have the greatest reach and the greatest return on the investment that you're making. Again, that's what I've heard. I'm not actually an advertiser, and I don't actually run the backside management of ad campaigns. So I don't know. The follow-up question to this one, though, said, did you have any surprises or good or bad from any ad performance? And again, I don't know how to even answer that. I'd have to ask Sean, who's been helping run those things. So let's move to the next question. What are some things you learned not to do when setting up a campaign? Okay. Well, one regret that I do have is I put off advertising and starting running ads a bit too long. And that's really because like I kept thinking, okay, I can do this, I can figure this out. And then other things just kept coming up and I kept procrastinating it because there were things, there were fires that had to be put out that I had to do first. And so I didn't get to it. And then finally it got to the point where I said, this has to start happening. I have to hire somebody to do this. And so don't do that, because that's where a lot of your audience growth comes from. And so one thing not to do is putting off building an audience, because that's a thing that will take a ton of time. And even if you have mountains of money and hordes of people who are working for you and advocating for you and who are out there trying to spread the word, it takes a lot of time. And so building an audience is one of those things that requires a lot of time. Now, I did do other things though that I was doing to help build an audience over time. But like the email marketing and the advertising side of things, I definitely put off probably too long. So that's a regret that I have. Another thing not to do is going alone, doing this on your own. I wouldn't recommend it for most people. I mean, most people couldn't even start doing it anyway, because it requires an immense broad skill set to be able to do this all on your own. And, but it's also, it's very overwhelming, very stressful to do it. So I'm not much of a runner. I've always disliked running. I played lacrosse growing up, and that was kind of the only way to get me to run was, have somebody running after me with a stick trying to hit me, and then I'd actually run. So when I look at people who run marathons, I've always been like, I don't know what is going on, because that sounds like the absolute worst, awful thing that anyone could ever do to themselves, like running a marathon, like a full marathon, or running like a triathlon or something that involves just grueling running. But I've kind of started to see a correlation, because just because I don't have a passion for running, I do have a passion for creation and for making things. I'm definitely a creator much more than I am a consumer. And this project, like I said, it's been a bit of a passion project, and it's kind of become this marathon to me, where as I've gone along, and I've gone like, oh, this is too much. I should just, get rid of this project and have somebody else do this or something like that. I get a little of that marathon mentality. I'm like, no, this is my project. I'm going to see it through to the very end. I am going to finish this thing. And I have that drive that pushes me through. And that's the only thing that's really keeping it going, because doing this all on your own, it's extremely stressful, and it can be very, very difficult. So what not to do, do it on your own, right? Don't do that. Have a group of people that can support and that have different skill sets that can be there doing different things. That's probably pretty smart. All right, next question. Was it difficult to get things set up with Kickstarter? Okay, so I think this is referencing to like the very initial Kickstarter setup process. And it's actually very, very easy to just get your campaign put into Kickstarter, like to set up things. All you really need is a bank, like a credit card bank account that can be verified. And then you just have to write up a really brief little description about what your project is. And then that gets sent to Kickstarter. They read through it. They say like, oh, that looks like a legitimate project. And then they approve it. It's really a very simple thing. It took me about probably a week, I don't know, to get a Kickstarter page set up. I actually did that a year and a half ago. I set up the Kickstarter campaign a year ago, right? So I had like a little pre-launch page set up, even though I wasn't using it, I wasn't promoting it, I wasn't even doing anything with it. I had the page set up, and I recommend doing that if you're starting a campaign. Don't wait until a month before or a few weeks before, and you're like, oh, we got to get to that campaign page. set that thing up and get Kickstarter ready way in advance, because then all of the work that you're doing leading up, all the pre-campaign type of stuff, you've got a link. You can send it to people and they can click notify me at launch, and if they're interested. And so having that page up as early as possible is a really, really great idea. So there you go. But it's very easy to do. It doesn't require all that much to do it. All right, next. How long does it take to get your Kickstarter campaign set up and ready for launch? Now that is a completely different story. And like I said, I've been working on this Kickstarter campaign, like preparing for the campaign for almost a little over a year and a half. But I've been doing it on my own, right? And like I said, some people can do this very quickly. But how long does it take? It all depends on how many people you have working for you. Honestly, it's taken me a really long time. And even now I'm like, oh, I could use another month or another 2 months or another 6 months because this can just keep getting bigger and bigger. But at some point, you can't just let this consume your entire life, right? And so like there has to be a deadline, there has to be a launch, or else you'll just keep doing this forever. Because there's 1,000,001 different things that you can do to prepare for a Kickstarter, and any Kickstarter, anyone who's been preparing for a Kickstarter has never done all 1,000,001 of them, right? There's like all this stuff you can do, and this is about as much as you end up doing. And once you do that, you realize, okay, there's a next ring. Like there's more that I can do. So if I can accomplish this, I'll start working on the next bit, and you're just going to do as much as you possibly can do. But it takes a really, really long time, and it takes, like I said, content. Content is critical in all of this stuff, and creating really good, thoughtful content. It's difficult and it takes a lot of time. And so does creating like really beautiful visuals and things like that. It takes a long time. So like I said, 18 months-ish for me to get this all put together. Okay, how long is your pre-launch phase? I just kind of talked about it. About 18 months. And what work are you doing during that time? Okay, so the different things that, the way that I approached this is I kind of planned out, okay, what are the things that I'm absolutely going to need to have, foundational things that are done and locked down that I can do before I ever even announce what the Kickstarter date is. So things like setting up the Kickstarter page, getting the game on BGG, and Board Game Atlas, and setting up all the social media accounts and getting those going, setting up a landing page that can start capturing email addresses and people who are interested, that then you can email out and let them know updates on the game. Creating a lot of the video assets, the promo video that you can then start sharing around, how to play videos you can start sharing around and have available for people. Make sure that the rule book is fully locked down, or at least in a state that it's really working well. You don't want to launch Kickstarter with a rule book that nobody can understand, or that it's draft 1. I think my rule book right now is the 10.7 or 8. Which means I've rewritten that rulebook 10 times, and there's been at least 7 to 10 versions within each of those versions. So that's a really big important thing to have locked down, as well as the game itself. You don't want to be developing the game, and certainly like I still have things that I want to tweak and to develop, but the game has to be pretty well formed, and mainly because if it's not, all the assets you're creating, all the videos and the rule books and all the imagery and the artwork, it all goes out the window as soon as you finish your next version of the game. So making sure that game is as tight and as done and as complete as you possibly can have it before you start generating all that stuff. Honestly, like that's one thing that's taken up a lot of my time. Is I've gotten to a point where I'm like, all right, the game is done. Everything, like, this is perfect. I make a video, and as soon as I publish that video, I immediately have some idea. It's like, oh, no, I should develop this in the game. Oh, now my video is out of date, right? And it just happens every single time. Or like I just finished, 30, 40 renders of the game. It took me a whole long time to stage the whole thing. And I need to change, the artwork now, or change the design in somewhere. Now I have to re-render all that stuff. That happens all of the time. So the more that you can have it done, the better. And at some point, like, with this campaign, at some point I said, all right, even though I have a few more little tweaks and ideas that will come after the campaign, I'm not making them now. because all of these assets, everything needs to feel up to date and needs to be ready for everybody who's jumping in to back this. It needs to feel as consistent as possible. And there's probably still going to be a few assets you'll be like, that looks like an older player mat or something like that. And that's because I didn't have time to update it. But there's a whole lot pre-launch phase. And so I did a lot of the groundwork and then announced that the game was coming and the launch date, and then started working toward doing the community engagement and which is a whole thing, and social media, a lot of content there. The follow-up question to this one, though, it says, do you still have time to tweak graphics and such? And absolutely, you can tweak things until you release to press, especially when with a Kickstarter game. You can always, that's kind of the expectation, honestly, is that you are actively developing it to make it better and better and better, and then you'll get user feedback to make it better and better, and so you're going to be constantly tweaking it. So it's absolutely okay. But again, at some point, you probably want to say, with this campaign, we're going to lock it for now. We're going to run the campaign, and then we'll pick that back up and keep working on things. All right. Our next question says, how do you build social media momentum or build a stronger/wider audience? Well, I am definitely not the poster child for social media momentum or social media at all, because get this, I had never set up a social media account until 18 months ago when I set up all of the stuff to start this campaign. I had never been on anything. Honestly, Twitter still just boggles my mind. It makes no sense to me. I still have not wrapped my head around what in the world is going on Twitter. But there's a whole lot of different channels with Facebook and Instagram, and even through Reddit and things like that, that you kind of have to have set up, because you'll need that social media momentum. So I'm not really honestly that great at it, at doing that stuff. I kind of found a home on Instagram. I really like Instagram just because it's there's pretty things there and you can post pretty things. And so I really like that. Again, I'm a creator and I like making visual things. So I've got this plethora of visual prettiness. So it's very easy for me to post and to engage on Instagram. So it's just feels natural for me. But I feel like Facebook is probably where your best communities are. That's where people are actually talking about things, commenting on things, and sharing ideas and things like that. And I'm not that great at it. So I'm probably not the right person to answer this question. But certainly, again, when it comes to social media, when it comes to community engagement, this is all about content. It's about creating great and engaging content, right? So if you're just posting the same one of three images that you've had over and over and over again, and posting the exact same content again, right? Like, I played my game again with a person. I played my game again with a person, or things like that. They get stale really fast, and people don't really follow. They get kind of disengaged. And so building an audience means engaging that audience. It's a full-time job. That one thing alone. Honestly, again, most content creators or Kickstarter groups, they're hiring some sort of advertising, PR, or community engagement agency who has a team of people that's actually doing the work behind the scenes. They're not actually doing it themselves, or the things that they are doing themselves is very minimal because someone else is managing a lot of the other stuff. So it's a tough thing to do, but if that's the thing that you love doing, then you might just love it there. But it's a very foreign thing for me, just because, again, I'm a creator. I like creating things. I don't consume a lot of things, so I don't watch a lot of things or listen to podcasts and all the things that other people do, because usually I have a project that's running and I'm focused on creating. I like just sitting and making things more than consuming other people's content. So that's just, how I am. So I don't really fit fully into the social media universe. All right. Next question. It says, how did you select a manufacturer? Oh, well, so right now I have I have preferred manufacturers that I've been getting quotes from. But at first it was actually really interesting. As soon as you say that you're running a Kickstarter, there are all sorts of manufacturers that start reaching out to you. And this has been going on for over a year now, where just another manufacturer never heard of, like, now, hey, we're interested in publishing your game. So I say, okay, here's my quotes. So there are a few manufacturers that I reached out to directly, like Panda and What's Games, where I took the initiative and I had heard about their reputation and I wanted to get a quote from them. And then there are many other manufacturers who have reached out, like Gameland and my goodness, I can't think of all of them now. There's so many Sky Games, and anyway, I probably have quotes out to 10 to 12 different manufacturers. It's a whole big list, but I've kind of narrowed it down to like these are the ones that I prefer right now. I'm still having ongoing conversations because I want to kind of test them a little bit, talk with them a little bit, get ideas from them, make sure that I'm feeling very comfortable and confident in their first off in their communication, their ability to work with me to make sure that they're going to be able to meet the needs of the game, as well as like come to the table with ideas to make the game better or more efficient or whatever it is, or higher quality. I want to make sure that they have those types of skills and they're not just there to say, yes, you give me money and we give you a product, because that's not what I'm looking for. I want someone who, that is really as passionate about the project as I am. I want them to be just that passionate, just as passionate. And so, but honestly, it's like, a lot of people have been coming to me and asking me, to get quotes from them. And I think that happens a lot, at least from what I've heard from other people, is that like, oh yeah, these, a whole list of people have reached out to me. But then there's others that, if you just do a little research or ask on a Facebook group, you can get a list of different publishers, or not manufacturers, in China, and just reach out to them. Just, send them emails. They'll respond back. They want business as much as you want goods produced. So, all right, next question. What is the state of the game now that the Kickstarter goes live? Does it still need more development time, or is everything ready to be sent to the printer? That's an excellent question. So the state of the game as it stands right now is I could release files today if I wanted to. I could, the state of the game right now, I could just package up the files and send them today. So everything is already buttoned up and ready to go. All the artwork's all done, ready to go. But that said, there are still things that I know will be coming down the road. So I know there'll be backer feedback. I want to incorporate that. There are other little bits that I would still love to develop and to push a little bit farther. There's something with the study action space that I want to crack the code of, because I want the symbols for what studying means and what returning for studying to means to be more clear for users or for players as they're playing the game. I want it to be very, very clear what a sacred site is and where they are, how things come back. And I think that the symbols can be better, and I think the communication can be better. And I want to solve that puzzle, right? So there's a little bit of development there. I also really want to have Automa develop for the large side of the map, the back side of the map. So there's a little bit of development there. So there's little things that I want to still focus on. And then from the campaign, I know there's going to be feedback to make some tweaks to the artwork or tweaks to the rulebook. The rulebook's a whole other thing. Right now, it's at a smaller 207 millimeter square, and I want that thing to be a little bit larger, which means laying it out, right? So even though things are ready and can be released right now because I've created these printer files, everything that I design, whenever I create, as a designer, when I create a file, it's always ready to release at any moment. I never create something in this big messy space and then have to go back and clean that file up. It's always ready to release. And so everything's ready to go, but there's still things that I really want to work on. But right now I'm not working on. I've paused it. I'm not developing it. I'm not working on it because making sure the Kickstarter is all buttoned up, ready to go. And we have a big first day, and the campaign is just awesome. It has a lot of fun things, and there's a lot of good surprises that are going to be coming, and a lot of things there. I want to make sure all that's buttoned up and ready to go first. So I haven't really been focusing on that, but so there's still things that I'll definitely be working on after the campaign's over. There we go. We hit the end, the very end of all the questions. Thanks again for submitting questions this week. It's really great, and hopefully those are some okay answers, or at least fun thoughts as you listen to my voice as I talk. So we are launching in so soon, folks. It's like just under 2 weeks. It's coming, and it's going to be here before you even know it. It's definitely going to be here before I know it, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you to be here as part of the journey, and and to have your support and all of this things. Because honestly, it means so much to me that there are people who are so excited about this and excited about the game and have been so incredible and supportive. So thank you so much for everybody and all your support and sharing the game and getting the word out and helping to build the audience. Because again, it's not my forte. I'm not that great at it. So it means a lot to me when people are sharing the campaign and bringing more people into the fold. Okay, everybody. Until next time, keep on playing. And when we launch, we're going to launch big.